Lillian Moore was a beloved mother, a trusted librarian, and the last person anyone suspected of living a lie. But beneath her quiet smile was a woman with a second name, a second life, and a secret so dangerous it got her killed. Lillian Moore's disappearance started like a whisper, the kind of thing small towns shrug off. At first. That morning in Brookridge, Ohio, her 3 children woke up expecting their usual routine. Breakfast was on the table, lunches packed, backpacks lined, up near the door, but something was off. Their mother wasn't there to wake them, wasn't humming softly in the kitchen like she always did. Her phone sat on the counter. Her purse was untouched. Her car was still in the driveway. It didn't look like she had left at all, and yet she was gone. At first, her friends and neighbors thought she must have stepped out for a walk, maybe had a medical emergency. A few suggested she was just overwhelmed and needed space. But by evening, when no one had heard from her, the worry turned into alarm. Her sister reported her missing. The police came, did a sweep of the house, checked her phone logs, and recent messages. Nothing out of the ordinary, no signs of forced entry, no struggle. It was like she had evaporated into the early morning air. The investigation moved quickly, but nothing made sense. Lillian was dependable, deeply rooted in her community. She volunteered at the local food pantry, helped with school functions, never missed her kids' basketball games or dentist appointments. She wasn't the type to just walk away. Her husband had died years earlier, and she had held the family together on her own since then. To everyone who knew her, she was a quiet hero, strong, caring, predictable. Then came a lead that changed everything. A neighbor across the street had a doorbell camera installed. When investigators reviewed the footage, they found a recording from around 4:12 a.m., just hours before the children woke up. The video showed a black SUV pulling up to the curb. The headlights stayed on, the engine running. After a few seconds, Lillian walked out of her front door wearing dark clothes and carrying a small duffel bag. She didn't appear frightened. She wasn't forced. She glanced over her shoulder once, then got into the back seat. The SUV drove off, silent as a ghost. It was the first break in the case, but also the first real mystery. Why would Lillian leave in the middle of the night? Where was she going? And more importantly, who was she meeting? Detectives began questioning those closest to her. Her friends swore she had never mentioned any troubles or upcoming trips. Her sister described her as cautious and homebound. Her co-workers at the library remembered nothing unusual. She had shown up the day before as cheerful and calm as always. If anything was wrong, Lillian had hidden it well. News of her disappearance spread quickly. Posters went up around town. A search, party-combed nearby woods, but no trace of her turned up. Not a footprint, not a call, not a clue, except for that eerie video. The image of Lillian stepping into that SUV haunted everyone who saw it, because it was clear, even then, that something wasn't right. And the truth, whatever it was still waiting to be uncovered. As days turned into weeks, the mystery of Lillian Moore's disappearance deepened. With no communication, no ransom note, and no trace of her since the doorbell camera footage, investigators began to widen their scope. Routine background checks turned up nothing unusual at first. Lillian had no criminal record, no financial troubles, and no history of mental illness. But as they looked closer, small details began to unravel the image of the reliable suburban mom everyone thought they knew. The first oddity came from her banking records. Her main account, joint with her late husband, showed a modest balance, consistent with her librarian's salary. But detectives noticed a curious pattern. Occasional deposits, sometimes as large as $3,000, made in cash. When they traced the source, they found that each deposit came from different cities: Toledo, St. Louis, even as far as New Orleans. It didn't make sense. Lillian rarely traveled and never mentioned any trips to friends or family. Digging deeper, authorities discovered 2 additional bank accounts registered under the name Elena Marsh. At first, they assumed it was a mistake or a stolen identity, but when they pulled security footage from banks tied to those accounts, there she was. Lillian, using a different ID, wearing unfamiliar clothes, her hair styled differently, sometimes with glasses. She looked like herself, but different enough to raise a chill. The woman in those videos wasn't the warm, smiling mother from Brookridge. She moved with confidence, looked over her shoulder constantly, and never stayed in one place long. Investigators obtained a warrant for a post office box linked to the Elena Marsh identity. Inside were rental agreements for storage units in 3 different cities, prepaid cell phones, and multiple forms of identification, all with Lillian's face but different names and birth dates. There was even a passport issued under a fake identity. It became undeniable. Lillian Moore had built a second life, completely separate from her family, her job, and the town that thought they knew her. News of the discovery shocked her loved ones. Her children were taken into the care of her sister, who couldn't believe what she was hearing. Friends felt betrayed, confused. The kind of woman who brought casseroles to new neighbors and wrote thank you notes by hand had also been forging documents, creating false trails, and traveling in secret. No one could understand why. The FBI joined the case, suspecting something. Bigger was at play. Financial records showed Lillian, under her alias, had made frequent purchases from obscure online vendors and small boutique shops in major cities. She wasn't just hiding her identity. She was moving through underground networks. Whatever Lillian had been involved in, it was complex, layered, and very deliberate. She hadn't just run away. She had lived a double life for years, and no one, not her family, not her friends, not even her children, had the slightest clue. It was clear now. Lillian's disappearance wasn't a random act. It was part of something much larger and far more dangerous. With Lillian's second identity confirmed, the investigation shifted from a missing persons case to something much darker. What had started as a simple disappearance was now unraveling into a sophisticated criminal web. The FBI's cybercrime and organized crime units began analyzing the bank transactions tied to the Eleanor Marsh alias. Patterns emerged, frequent wire transfers between seemingly unrelated shell companies, purchases of luxury items that were never delivered to Lillian's home, and cash deposits made just under the federal reporting threshold to avoid detection. One storage unit in Chicago, rented under one of her fake names, provided the next major breakthrough. Inside were racks of high-end handbags, boxes of unopened designer shoes, and stacks of counterfeit perfumes, nearly all of it bearing fake branding or missing serial numbers. Investigators realized they weren't just looking at stolen property. This was part of an illicit distribution network, specializing in counterfeit luxury goods smuggled in from overseas. Lillian had been acting as a courier, transporting these items across state lines under the radar. Surveillance footage from a luxury mall in Atlanta showed her entering a back entrance with a rolling suitcase, staying less than 30 minutes, and leaving without it. The security team hadn't flagged the footage at the time, but with the investigation in full swing, it became clear that she had been delivering merchandise. Other locations in New York and Los Angeles confirmed similar patterns. Phone records from one of the prepaid devices found in the storage unit showed coded texts and calls to burner numbers traced to known associates in the black market trade. There were also voice messages from an unidentified male contact giving instructions in vague but urgent language. Phrases like "new drop window confirmed" and "travel light this time" suggested a level of coordination and secrecy well beyond anything typical for a suburban mother. No one close to her had the faintest idea. At home in Brookridge, Lillian lived a life of rigid normalcy, attending school plays, picking up groceries, paying bills on time. Her children described her as always being present, always knowing where they were and what they needed. Yet during school holidays, when she claimed to be visiting extended family or attending conferences, she was often hundreds of miles away, exchanging illegal merchandise for envelopes of cash. One retired agent on the case called her one of the most convincing double lives he'd ever seen. There were no digital breadcrumbs, no careless posts, no missed steps. Everything she did was calculated. From the second name to the hidden cash, from the burner phones to the separate wardrobes stored in lockers across the country, Lillian had compartmentalized her life so thoroughly that the two worlds never touched, until now. It was becoming clear that her disappearance wasn't just about fleeing. Something had gone wrong in her other life. Perhaps a deal fell apart, or maybe someone in the organization suspected her of betrayal. Whatever it was, Lillian Moore had been playing a dangerous game, and someone, somewhere, had decided her time was up. 2 weeks after the discovery of Lillian's secret life, a grim call came from the Davidson County Sheriff's Office in Tennessee. A hiker had stumbled upon a shallow grave near the edge of a remote wooded area outside Nashville. The remains were wrapped in a tarp and partially buried beneath a layer of loose brush and dirt. Forensic investigators were called in immediately. Dental records confirmed the worst fear. It was Lillian Moore. She had been shot twice, once in the chest, once in the head. There were no signs of a struggle, suggesting she may have been ambushed or killed quickly. The medical examiner estimated the time of death as the same day she disappeared from Brookridge. Her clothes were unfamiliar, not something anyone had seen her wear before. She was carrying no identification, and her personal items had been stripped from her body. Whoever had left her there wanted her to vanish completely. The FBI and local authorities joined forces to retrace her final movements. Highway cameras and toll booth logs revealed that a black SUV matching the one seen in the Brookridge doorbell footage had traveled through Ohio, Kentucky, and into Tennessee in the hours after her disappearance. Traffic footage showed the vehicle, making a stop at a small gas station outside Louisville. When agents pulled the security video, Lillian was seen entering the store to use the restroom. She looked calm but distant, eyes scanning constantly, shoulders tense. She wasn't panicked, but she wasn't at ease either. The SUV was later traced to a rental under a false name, connected to a known associate of an underground criminal syndicate. That man, identified only by the alias Mick, had a long but quiet history of suspected involvement in organized smuggling and money laundering. He'd never been caught with enough evidence to face charges. Until now. Agents arrested him at a motel outside Memphis, where he had been laying low under yet another false identity. In his possession were 3 phones, multiple fake IDs, and a large amount of cash. Under questioning, Mick denied knowing Lillian or having anything to do with her disappearance, but a search of one of his devices revealed a recent call log with one of Lillian's burner numbers. There was also a GPS history showing the exact forested location where her body had been found. Investigators believe Lillian may have been trying to leave the operation. Bank records showed she had recently moved a large sum of money into a secure digital wallet, perhaps to fund her escape. A draft email, never sent, was recovered from one of her devices, addressed anonymously to federal authorities. In it, she hinted at providing evidence in exchange for protection. That email never reached its destination. The evidence painted a chilling picture. Lillian had grown tired of her double life. Maybe she feared for her children, or maybe she simply wanted out. But in a world ruled by secrets, loyalty wasn't optional. Someone in the network had discovered her intentions, and she paid for it with her life. Her journey ended alone, buried in silence, her two worlds colliding in a final act of betrayal. After the arrest and the grim discovery of Lillian's body, Brookridge, Ohio, was left in stunned silence. A woman once celebrated for her kindness, her devotion to her children, and her presence in every corner of the community had turned out to be someone entirely different. It wasn't just her death that shocked people. It was the life she had been living in secret. Neighbors began to question how well they really knew anyone. If Lillian Moore could hide an entire second existence, who else might be doing the same? Her children were placed in the care of their aunt, who struggled to shield them from the media storm. Reporters swarmed the small town, asking questions no one could answer. Was Lillian forced into crime, or did she choose it? What was the breaking point that led her to juggle two identities? Had anyone come close to discovering her secret before she vanished? Even the most thorough investigation couldn't fully answer these questions. What remained were only fragments of a story, evidence, timelines, digital traces, but no clear explanation of motive. Forensic analysts and behavioral experts combed through her past for signs of psychological stress or trauma, but Lillian had no history of abuse, addiction, or major instability. Her transition into a criminal lifestyle appeared deliberate and careful. She hadn't made mistakes. She hadn't taken risks that drew attention. She was methodical, balancing PTA meetings with smuggling trips, birthday parties with encrypted texts to underground contacts. If she hadn't disappeared, it's likely no one would have ever known the truth. What haunted investigators most was how convincingly she had lived both lives. Her children had never noticed anything strange. They remembered her late-night reading sessions, her constant presence at school events, and the way she always made them feel safe. Those memories were now tainted by the knowledge that on weekends, when she claimed to be visiting her sister, she was making illegal drop-offs in cities hundreds of miles away. The woman they had called Mom had also been someone else entirely. In the weeks following her funeral, small memorials appeared outside the local library where she worked. Flowers, notes, candles, but behind every gesture was confusion. Some called her a victim, others called her a criminal. Most just didn't know what to think. One thing was clear. The woman they had all trusted had mastered the art of hiding in plain sight. The man known as Mick was eventually charged in connection with her murder, but he refused to testify. No one else in the smuggling operation came forward. Without more witnesses or confessions, the case hit a wall. It was as if Lillian's double life had died with her, leaving behind only questions and silence. In Brookridge, the story of Lillian Moore became a cautionary tale whispered among neighbors. It wasn't just a story about crime or deception. It was about how a person can live beside you, raise a family, bake cookies, and still be a stranger. And how sometimes the most dangerous secrets are the ones kept behind the calmest smile.